Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum today. Okay. Go around the room and start with introductions. Rich, we'll start with you.
Rich DeGrosser, Lakeway Area MTPO.
Karen S. is Knox County CEC Transit.
Michelle Christian, TPOt OCT.
Patrick Berg, City of Oak Ridge.
Tanner Charles, Knoxville Area Transit.
Deanna Flincham, Knoxville Commuter Pool.
Blake Sarton, Metro Knoxville Airport Authority.
Amy Brooks, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Jim Snowden, Knox County Engineering.
Tom Claybo, City of Knoxville.
Jack Wall, City of Loudon, Loudon County.
Jeff Welch, Knoxville TPO.
Brian Boone, City of Maryville Engineering and Public Works.
Chico Messer, Blount County.
Daryl Smith, Town of Farragut.
James Temple, Sevier County.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Laura Smith, East Tennessee Development District.
Dakota Gentry, City of Alcoa.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom this morning? All right, seeing none, is there any amendments to the agenda? Greg, you got an amendment there?
I am trying to advance slides, but slides are obstinate this morning.
Staff does not have any amendments.
Okay, let's just move on. We've got some technical difficulties under control. Item number 2 on the agenda is the minutes from the June 13th, 2023 technical meeting.
Move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, fiscal year 2024-2025 TPO work program. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, if you've been here long enough, we do have to prepare a transportation planning work program for the TPO. We do every other year with occasional updates. This is the work program for the 2024-2025 year, which begins October 1st this year. We have some major initiatives that will be undertaken during this effort, including the preparation of the new 2050 mobility plan, a travel model demand update as part of that, continued pavement management program, phase 2 of that effort, working with our local jurisdictions for collection of pavement management information. And we are exploring the participation with other MPOs across the state and in partnership with TPOt to do a household travel survey. Guidelines, particularly in the area of travel modeling, is that within 10 years, you should try to do a household travel survey to get better information regarding characteristics of trip and travel within your urban area. So we're exploring that partnership with our MPOs and TPOt. There's always the other side that is now occurring now is a bunch of big data that is out there. How can you use the big data that is generated from a variety of sources out there, and how reliable is that data in that? But right now we are pursuing doing a household travel survey in partnership with our other MPOs across the state and to pool our funds and resources for that. The rest of the work program is a lot of our ongoing activities, such as doing the traffic counts, working on our safety planning, greenway facilities planning for our local jurisdictions. We have still continued in our budget, or at least left in our budget, is probably about $500,000 that is available for planning studies that may come up with your jurisdictions in the next couple of years. So if there are some planning studies that you're interested in, we do have that set aside in the budget for the work program for that. It would require a 15% match for that effort. We cannot do engineering studies, but we can do planning studies and some functional planning and that for that effort. So I guess the staff has looked at this, submitted to TPOt and our FHWA partners, and have had their concurrence that the work program is in conformance to state and federal guidelines. So staff would recommend that the technical committee make a motion for recommendation of approval to the executive board.
All right. Seeing that, does anybody have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Can I get a second? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, Fiscal year 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program Project Cost Overrun. Greg.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a new process with the update to the new tip. Something that we instituted as a programming policy was both a contingency reserve and a cost overrun oversight policy, where in projects that were adding an over 500,000 in TPO directed federal funds or increasing a project more than 25% above the existing total project cost would require approval of the technical committee. So this is the first one that we have, and this is actually within the CMAQ PM 2.5 budget, which is directed also at the only available here for the Knoxville TPO, so Programming Authority rests here with the committee. The first one, again, Oak Ridge Signal Timing Optimization. This is the phase 2 of their project. As with many projects that are coming in right now, we are seeing estimates and lettings are coming in over the initially programmed amounts for the projects. This project currently has about $2.5 million. This was initially CMAQ. In working through the CMAQ revisions and constraint programs, this was shifted to the state carbon reduction program funding. The request for the additional cost increase is an additional $1.2 million of CMAQ PM 2.5. That represents 43% increase of the total project cost, and of course as well in excess of $500,000 as well. The total construction cost currently estimated for that $3.8 million, and the overall all-in project just under $4.1 million. I will go briefly over kind of the status of funds summary, where we stand within that overall program. Again, this is about $1.25 million that's being requested. That represents 26.7% of the current available PM 2.5 balance of $4.6 million. As of today, that would draw that number down to $3.4 million. We would get a new allocation of funding on October 1, the fiscal 24 balance that would bring that number back up to $8.2 million. If you look at a longer term, what is available through the life of the TIP, this request is 6.4% of the projected funding available balance through here. The remaining TIP period balance with this project overrun included there that you see in column, the second cell down in column fiscal 23. This would leave us with $18.1 million available within the CMAQ 2.5 program. And we've lost that screen, but we're still up there for y'all. So, and we're back. That is kind of the overview of the numbers. If there are specific questions regarding the nature of the overrun or anything, Oak Ridge representatives Roger Flynn is here that can answer any questions or maybe provide a little additional insight into the cost overrun status, although I know all of you on this board are familiar with the environment that we're in with estimates. Do you want to speak to
do you
general?
care to kind of just explain briefly why the cost overruns are so significant?
Yeah, what we've got is a project that we originally guesstimated in 2017 to 2018, which is pre-COVID. We looked at a CMAQ project, a signal project along Oak Ridge Turnpike with 14 intersections. We are also simultaneously building a multimodal project in the exact same corridor in the exact same intersections. That's not what you have today, but the point being that we're doing signal improvements with CMAQ, we're doing concrete and sidewalk improvements with multimodal. So we've kind of married the two. And consequently, they both need to be done simultaneously. We are now at the point that we have got final design project. We've submitted it. We're actually requesting the notice to proceed for construction. We now know the equipment costs. We certainly know that, after COVID, that all construction costs have gone up. We've got basically a summary of all the costs and a new estimate as opposed to our original guesstimate. And this project is very similar to all the other projects. It's just simply inflation has run the costs up. So we have a more accurate estimate now of what we need. We also expect to see some overruns in the multimodal project. And again, we'll have to cover those ourselves, I think. But that's kind of a short answer to your question, but it's very similar to all other projects. It's simply cost over time.
So there was no scope change.
Sir?
Basically, it was no scope change. Basically, it was just
No scope change. We're doing the exact same work we were doing before. It's just simply time has caused prices to go up.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think, like someone said, everyone at this table has experienced this at one time or another. Unfortunately, probably going to experience it more from what I hear. Just saying.
Everything we're hearing, all the projects we're hearing about are the exact same way. So anyway, if there's anything specific, any particular thing you want to know, I'll try to answer it.
I think the concerning part for me is, we just passed kind of our cost overrun procedures, I guess you would say, and we're going to start seeing more and more, I think, of this kind of thing.
These percentages are almost identical to what we're seeing on the multimodal. We just updated it, and the percentages are, they're almost identical.
Questions or comments?
Just point out that the slide that Craig had there after, which showed potentially future revenues and that, it's our best guess. As just like your cost estimates, I'm not talking particularly to your project, but just saying that we anticipate $8.2 million, but U.S. House of Representatives has slashed quite a few transportation programs funding for next year's in their proposed budget. The Senate has not. What will come out of the compromise, we may or may not, or U.S. DOT may or may not get their requested dollars, so that $8.2 million may be less. But I'm just saying it's our current guess of what the anticipated revenues will be over the next 3 years. So, but we have to deal with the issues today. So staff is not in objection to this request, but again, we all know that we'll have ongoing requests for funding these shortfalls.
Yeah.
Craig, explain that.
So the 1.2 that you see there, overall revenue, the green line that you get down there between what we carried forward into this year, we're currently sitting at $12.1 million. We have 7.5 of it that's already been flexed to FTA. That was actually an ongoing balance that needed to get off the books that TDOT requested us to do. We just had some changes on that within the last couple of months. That money's been flexed out. So I guess that would kind of leave us there again. We're at 3.4 if this would be approved right now. And then October 1, pending what happens in Washington, we would speculatively have an additional allocation for fiscal 24 projected at $4.8 million. So if you look in the light green, that allocation line. So that is our revenue projected in the given year. I don't know if that helps. Yep. So this one is a little different in the sense that the policy that was adopted was TPO directed revenue, which was TAP, carbon reduction, STBG programming. We reserved about 9% of that money back. That was kind of what we had to work with that we could constrain. These PM 2.5 monies have kind of come in after we set that up. It was determined that the money is only available to the Knoxville region. So then that kind of devolved that programming authority to this agency. So all of that money that you see here now doesn't specifically have a set aside, but in the sense that right now with this, I mean, largely all of it to some degree is set aside because there's nothing programmed in the out years right now because this kind of came in after we set that policy up. This one technically doesn't fit under that policy, but we thought that it really is, it is the same thing. So we're folding it in now and processing it through this thing, although it doesn't strictly meet the letter that's written down in the document right now. Does that help? So program reserve, you could argue, is $18.1 million right now, in addition to the 1.2, so $19.3 million. an additional clarification. The overrun policy that was established was to provide additional oversight and transparency for these cost overruns. In the past, had we not adopted that policy, this change would actually fall within the limits that would allow it to be added as an administrative modification. So there would be no board review or action, and that could be done administratively at the staff level. And we wanted to provide additional clarity, transparency, and review, just as we're doing here with these increases.
I think Catherine's got it.
I was just curious. I remember when, it's been a year and a half, 2 years, that we raised the percentage of money going into the pot for overruns.
Yep, that was part of the discussion with setting up the new tip.
Considering the time frame for projects to move forward through our process,
Mm-hmm.
they're just now coming to construction that have been in there pre-COVID. Do we have enough? Is our set aside large enough? Since these are, I realize that's
That's a full question.
$18.1 million question.
Well, right now, certainly within this program, because we do not have additional assigned projects here, there are no projects in the pipeline projected for that. You see that? Does that work? The line of programmed in 24, 25, 26 right now is zeros. There are no projects in the pipeline because this funding source was kind of rolled down to us after this new tip was set up. Now, within the LSTBG program is kind of the main one. That one would be more of a concern. We have, something like $9 million in the reserve, if I recall off the top of my head, roughly $100 million and 9% of that. So that one is going to be more of a challenge, and I think that remains to be seen, but I think we're going to have some difficult choices as we move forward with that one.
I think we've all recognized that the worst time to run out of money is when something's ready to be let. And
Correct.
We know that we've got cost overruns. If we can't cover them, that's our big problem.
Mm-hmm. We are, we have tried to prepare for this as best we could within the context of keeping the program whole and reserving as much as we could. You recall we did not add any new projects to this tip for exactly this reason. Whether that will be sufficient to keep everything to letting is a process we're going to have to kind of go through as we unfold. We are hopeful that the program, the LSTBG program primarily, may receive some relief through the statewide partnership program that just recently rolled out. I know we had some projects otherwise funded with MPO funds that were applied for there. Whether or not we'll receive some relief that will perhaps allow us to contain that remains to be seen.
Any more questions? Motion for approval.
So moved.
Need a second. Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, Congressional Directed Project Update. Greg, it's you.
Yep, thank you. Just want to bring it to everyone's attention. Again, speaking of Congress there, roughly we have congressionally directed projects update from the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, Public Law 117-328, if you want to look it up for some light reading. Essentially, these are earmarks. That's the term they're calling them now. So there were, just to provide information for everyone, there were 7 projects that were set aside for funding in the state of Tennessee. 3 are in the TPO planning area, and a 4th is outside of the planning area in Sevier County. So I think the region did fairly well in securing funding for those projects. Roughly about half of the money within the state actually is here listed on this table in these 4 projects. This is made available under the Highway Infrastructure Program and administered as if under Chapter 1, Title 23, which is the federal aid highways process. Funds are available for obligation until September 30th, 2026, so end of fiscal 2026. Blount County Greenway Project, we're talking to Chico earlier, ready to move forward with that. That should allow that significant portion from the schools out west towards Townsend or east towards Townsend to move forward. Knoxville South Waterfront Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge, $500,000 assigned to that project. That one's a bit more of a complicated situation with the overall funding cost for that. State Road 35 construction and improvements, that's Sevierville Road down in Maryville, $1.5 million is assigned to that project. And then State Road 449, extension of Veterans Boulevard outside the planning area, also in Sevier County. So just wanted to kind of bring those up and make sure that every local agency is aware of those funds that are here within the region. And didn't have too much more than that. And I'll pause if there are any questions on those.
I just want to comment on the State Route 35 construction improvements. We had looked at this when it first came out, and it didn't dawn on us. It was just State Route 35. There's no county, no city, or anything like that. And it just dawned on us, and then TDOT advised us about 10 days ago that is the project in Sevierville. The State Route 35 does traverse
Maryville.
Maryville. And
yeah, that one slid by us.
So it was like, again, we did not figure that out until about 10 days ago with TDOT support. So maybe this little bit of additional money will incentivize the state to move forward on that project. It's been sitting around for quite some time. It's good. Starts and fits in that, but perhaps TDOT can elevate that project to get it moving more quickly. Hint to TDOT, Dexter, and folks out there.
All right. Moving on, item number 6, mobility plan process update.
Good morning, everyone. This is just a brief, quick update on the mobility plan update process. Jeff actually touched on this in the work program discussion. So this is more of just a heads up than anything else. So we're starting the process to update a major update of our mobility plan. We're required to do that every 4 years. And the last one was adopted in May of 2021, which doesn't feel like it was that long ago, the mobility plan 2045. But it, of course, takes a good amount of time to go through the update process. And the next one's due by May of 2025, a little less than 2 years from now. So we've started that process and decided to go through the TDOT on-call consultant selection process. They have 10 consultants, and we felt most, if not all, had the abilities to do long-range planning. So it was a little more streamlined process than doing our own RFP to select consulting services. Through that, we've selected a consultant, Stantec, that has some sub-consultants with them. We haven't worked with that group before, but we were very intrigued by their proposal and some of the example plans they've worked on in South Carolina and some other states. So we're excited to work with that group. We're waiting on a kickoff meeting and TDOT to finalize that and schedule that. It's kind of still in TDOT's hands and not turned over to us quite yet. I do also want to mention that Lakeway area is updating their plans simultaneous with us. As we've done in the past, we've been sort of tied together with the air quality conformity requirement. And that's one reason why we have to update every 4 years. If you're an MPO without air quality conformity, you can do every 5 years. But that's why we're in that boat. So this is just the schedule that the consultant had laid out in their proposal. So it's very preliminary and subject to change. I won't go through all those steps. We've kind of identified the typical tasks you go through in a long-range plan update. You identify your needs, evaluate different measures and criteria. I know a lot of folks are interested in when do we do the call for projects. So that would kind of be under the task number 9 there. If you look at the calendar, somewhere probably next spring, April, May, June timeframe is when we would be going through asking for projects and evaluating those during that time frame. So, but all this is still to be determined. Of course, we'll be back with you guys throughout the process, giving you updates. One key component will be the public and stakeholder involvement and how we decide to set that up. The last plan literally kicked off the week before the COVID shutdowns. So the entire process for the last mobility plan was done virtually. This time we want to do some in-person engagement, task force, other things that we'll look at doing. And of course, again, coming back to this group regularly. and we'll need some decision points along the way as we go through the process. And then also along with the long-range plan update, we're going to do an update of our travel demand forecasting model. The model includes 10 counties in both the Lakeway area and our Knoxville TPO area. We decided to do a separate RFQ because there are some specialized consulting skills involved with model updates that we want to broaden the pool for that. So we've made an initial consultant selection. We haven't finalized anything yet with doing a contract, but that's underway and should be done fairly soon. We identified 3 initial tasks. One would be a minor model update to update our base year from 2018 to 2022, and then have on-call services in conjunction with the mobility plan analysis. Typically, I do that work. We get the model from the consultant, and I do the model runs to support the long-range plan development, but this time we foresee that there might be some specialized analysis we want to do. For example, the TPOt choice lanes, evaluate things like that, or even regional bypass stuff that we might want to have some additional support. Then finally, what we want to do is have a major visioning exercise for the next generation of our model. We've been using sort of the similar model framework since 2012, just kind of updating it with minor updates since then. We recognize a lot has changed since 2012, and the last, Jeff mentioned the household travel survey that we're looking at as a statewide potential. Our last survey was done in 2008, and so obviously things have changed quite a bit since then, post-COVID, especially with increased working from home, online shopping. Here, maybe not as much as some areas, but we have new modes of travel, the micro-mobility, electric scooter, that kind of thing. So we want to obviously update that survey, and then with that, develop an entirely new potential model structure and advance there's several new techniques out there for modeling. I won't get into the weeds of that now, but anyway, we'll involve this group and whoever else is interested in a visioning workshop, what do we want the model to do and all that, and then find out what the data needs for that are. So that sums up those items. Again, very early stages right now, but if there are any questions, I can try to answer those.
Any questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks.
Number 7, Regional Roadway Safety Action Plan. We have Fairpoint Planning here. Can you tell Tanisha Hall I said that I'm disappointed she didn't show up today?
Will do. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Veronica Carter with Fairpoint Planning, and your agenda does say Tanisha Hall, but she is sick, so she was not able to be here this morning. So I'll do my best to share this information with you and answer any questions you may have. So this morning, we're going to be talking about the Knoxville TPO Regional Roadway Safety Action Plan. This plan takes the approach of the Vision Zero strategy. This project started last year and has gone through, or the beginning of this year, and was recently adopted in June. And so today I'll give you a brief overview of the planning process and then some short-term action items that we can hopefully get started with this year. All right, so this plan is rooted in the Safe System approach, which is a safety framework developed and adopted by the U.S. DOT. This approach is all about building safety redundancy in our system, the basic idea being humans make mistakes and they will continue to make mistakes. And so how can we include redundancy in our systems to, if one component breaks down, others will be in place to prevent life-threatening injuries. So this, for example, in a traditional safety approach, we would often be trying to achieve safety by improving human behavior. But with the Safe System approach, we would look at designing for human mistakes and limitations. Another component that you'll see later is instead of being reactive based on crash history, we will choose to be proactive in identifying and addressing risks. So these are the guiding principles that focus on the 5 aspects of safety, which are safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care. So on the right side of your screen, you can see the 5 guiding principles that the stakeholders came up with. And these include traffic deaths and severe injuries are unacceptable and preventable. Human life is vulnerable and takes priority over moving cars. Traffic safety is everyone's responsibility and should reflect community needs. Roadways should be designed to account for human error and ensure that mistakes aren't deadly or life-altering. And quality data, transparent evaluation, and transparent decision-making are needed at all levels of government. So these are the guiding principles that we use throughout this process. Okay, so now I'll walk through some of the core components of the plan, including briefly touching on the analysis we did, which informed the development of the action plan recommendations. And I'll just say we really made it a priority to fit each jurisdiction's goals within this plan, as there's a lot within the TPO to consider. So first, equity, of course, is super important. So studies show at the national level that people of color are more likely to be killed in crashes, as well as older Americans. And we know some of these disparities are included in the Knoxville TPO region. It was therefore important that we prioritize equity in this plan. So we used the Equitable Transportation Community Explorer tool by the USDOT to identify areas that are considered disadvantaged in the Knoxville area. So this tool takes into consideration climate and disaster risk burden, environmental burden, health and social vulnerability, and transportation insecurity. So it then produces a final index score, which gives you these yellow and orange areas on the map. So the analysis found that 43% of residents in the Knoxville region live in a disadvantaged area. So took that into consideration as we developed these recommendations. All right, the meat of the analysis is the regional high injury network. So a high injury network identifies specific roads that bear a disproportionate amount of serious crashes. These corridors are a small subset of the larger overall roadway network and represent opportunities for targeted investments where it is needed most. So the roads on the HIN that ranked particularly high for severe crashes are shown as Tier 1, and they are red on the map that you can see. And actually, 2 separate HINs were developed, one at the regional level and one at the city level. So right now we're looking at the regional high injury network. And a couple of important things to note with the regional HIN is 1.7% of the regional streets accounted for 29% of the injury crashes. So fatal and injury crashes are more dispersed in the region than the city. Consequently, the overall percentage of the roadway network captured by the HIN is lower, but the total roadway mileage is greater than the city of Knoxville HIN. So now we'll look at the city of Knoxville's high injury network. And a couple of things to note here is that the overall percentage went up to 5% of non-interstate roadways in the city that account for 63% of severe injury crashes. So this is an larger overall percentage of the roadway network compared to the regional HIN. And I know this is a lot of information, so I'd encourage you to go to the TPO website and kind of dig in deeper and take a look at these maps closer when you can. Okay, so moving on to the crash profiles and the predictive analysis. And before I dive in, I just want to give a shout out to Ellen and the TPO team. They did a lot of pre-work on cleaning up the crash data, which made this process a lot easier and quicker, this is valuable information. So that was very helpful. So these are crash profiles. We created 6 crash profiles, 3 from the city of Knoxville's data and 3 at the regional level. But we like to think about it more as an urban versus rural context. So that doesn't mean one can't necessarily relate to the other and vice versa. So crash profiles represent specific conditions that count for a large share of the fatal and serious injury crashes in the Knoxville region. So what we saw in the city of Knoxville, these are the 3 profiles we came up with. The first being motor vehicle crashes in commercial areas. The second, left turn, U-turn related motor vehicle crashes at signalized intersections. And the third being pedestrian and bicyclist related crashes in commercial areas along arterials. And so these crash profiles also show ownership of the road. So is it a TDOT road? Is it a local road? It shows the mode of transportation, which in this case are motor vehicles and bicycle and pedestrian. And then also some potential countermeasures that can be used to address the crashes. Okay, and now we're looking at the regional crash profiles. So these are the crashes we saw that were happening most frequently in the region. The 4th crash profile is motor vehicle crashes at nighttime on arterials. The 5th being motor vehicle roadway departure crashes on slopes and hill crests. And then also crashes involving motorcycles. And so just an example of some potential countermeasures to be used to address the particular crash type. We looked at, for the roadway departure crashes on slopes and hill crests, some potential countermeasures could be used, including crash cushions, safety edges, or wider safety edge lines. And then, or if you look at the motor vehicle crashes at nighttime on arterials, a quick solution could be adding more lighting to illuminate those roads. Okay, and so this is the predictive analysis. So we looked at existing crash data, and that was the crash profiles. Now we're looking at predictive analysis, which highlights roadways where severe crashes are likely to occur in the future. So we did this by identifying characteristics associated with high crash locations and identifying other roadways with those similar characteristics, even if they're not currently experiencing a high number of actual crashes. So the list of variables is on the screen on the left that we use to compare roadways with observed crashes to other roadways in the area. So these variables focused on land use, roadway road characteristics, and then relation to intersections. And the table on the right shows roads with the highest predicted crash index, which we can also look at on a map here shortly. Okay, this map is a lot, so I'll try to explain it the best I can. So the predictive analysis looks at the relationship between the predicted severity index and all of the observed severity index of crashes. So the way you can read this map is the top left blue color saw a high predicted but low observed. So these segments have characteristics of high crash roadways but have not seen as many actual crashes. So this doesn't mean they're not experiencing near misses that aren't captured in crash data, or there may be other variables not included in the model that reduce their risk of severe crashes. So improvements on these segments should be a priority for preventing crashes in the future before they happen. And then moving on to the top right with the dark brown color, these are high observed and high predicted. So these roads are showing characteristics of high crash rates, and also they are experiencing high crash rates in actual data. So these roads should be considered high priorities. Moving on to the orange in the bottom right corner, these are low predicted but high observed. So these are high crash roadways that we would not expect to have a high number of crashes based on the characteristics identified in the model, but they're having a high observed amount. So there could be other variables, again, not shown in the model that are contributing to this number and these crashes, such as blind curves or poor street lighting. And so these factors should be further investigated. And then lastly, we have the beige color on the bottom left, and this is low predicted and low observed. So these are low crash roadways that have characteristics consistent with low crash roadways. So these characteristics should be documented as potential countermeasures. So look what they're doing well on these streets and how they're preventing any crashes at the current time. So from the previous slide, we narrowed down the high predicted and high observed category to the top 2% of roadways. And so this is kind of the worst of the worst. And I know it's hard to see exactly where these are, but in the plan, it lists them out in more detail. So moving on to short-term actions, and this is where we want to get you guys thinking today and be thinking about ways you can implement these in the next year and make some real change soon. So the Knoxville TPO has already applied for the Knoxville Regional Safe Streets for All implementation grant. The City of Knoxville and the region applied for one. And then also collaborating with TPOt was super important through this process. Actually, Ellen sat down with them and looked through the priority list. And through that process, TPOt was able to take off projects that were already, Ellen, this action plan was able to take off projects that were already being addressed by TPOt through the HSIP so that the region could prioritize other projects on the list. So this continued collaboration will be key in the future. And then you see other items like overseeing the Regional Roadway Safety Task Force, making annual progress on implementing policy, and then monitoring that progress as well. Okay, the report includes 30 actions that can be used to address safety challenges. Today we're going to go over 9 of them, but these are, all 30 are organized into 5 categories, which are design, land use, plans, policies, and programs. And so we'll start with the 9 short-term actions that the TPO can work on in the next year. So first is targeted reductions to off-street parking requirements. Reducing government mandates to provide off-street parking can help make areas more walkable and mitigate vehicle conflicts with vulnerable road users, as well as reducing development costs. Another land use item would be to require new developments to consider bicycle and pedestrian impacts. This can improve roadway safety by ensuring that the needs of vulnerable road users are emphasized as the region grows. The third land use recommendation would be to expand bicycle parking requirements in appropriate locations. So this could bicycle requirements and unbundling them from vehicle parking. This could support multimodal transportation by advancing the feasibility of bicycle travel for short trips in densely populated areas and ultimately improving safety for these users. And then moving into the plans category for the recommendations, the TPO should consider auditing bus stops along the HIN to identify both quick build strategies and long-term improvements as needed, including ADA compliance. Safety issues for vulnerable users can arise when transit stops lack comfortable and accessible connections. So these transit stops improvements can include anything from relocations to enhance safety, ADA improvements, or the addition of rider amenities to improve comfort and accessibility. And then moving on to the policy section, a policy action item would be that vulnerable road users should be provided with safe routes when construction projects or road work can disrupt conditions. This can be a simple coordination item that can ensure traveling is safe for all types of roadway users. And then the Regional Transportation Demand Management, or TDM program, Smart Trips, provides alternatives to single occupancy vehicle travel through centralized information and travel rewards. So increasing the visibility of this already existing program and spreading the knowledge that this exists could improve safety and help people use other travel modes besides single occupancy vehicles. And then we've talked about this before in this presentation, but improving the crash data and transportation and transparency. That's essential to understanding and responding to crash patterns in the Knoxville region. And like I said, the TPO is already doing work to improve the crash data, but establishing a program could be essential to supporting these efforts. Crash data should be shared publicly, and the TPO could explore ways to collect data on near misses and unreported traffic-related injuries. And then finally, it would be recommended to establish a regional safety evaluation working group to monitor performance measures. A regional working group focused on monitoring performance measures would ensure that a regional progress on addressing these strategies is tracked and documented over time. And so the Knoxville TPO could lead the formation and organization of this group. And that is it. This plan was adopted, like I said, in June. This plan was adopted by the TPO, and the city of Knoxville and the region has already applied for the Safe Streets for All grant. And Jennifer Baldwin, the project manager from Alta on this project, also told me that the city is possibly planning a engagement roadshow to spread awareness of the plan and promote Vision Zero. So that's all I have for today. I can try to take any questions, and if I can't answer them, I will point them to the project manager, and she'll get back to you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any questions?
I just do want to take this time to indicate that Ellen Zaviska has left planning staff, and she is now working for Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations as a staff member. So it was sort of a surprise to us that she decided to leave, but it was timely for her and a great opportunity for her to move on. So thank her for the work that she did with this and setting up this whole safety initiative for the TPO and all of your participation in that effort and the work that Alta did on, it is Alta, right? Yes. And
Sorry.
Fairpoint and
Alta Planning, yeah.
Alta did on this plan. I think it laid a great foundation for us locally here and the TPO to continue to address safety issues. It's become a greater challenge to us, meeting the needs of all users of our transportation system. So, other than that, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Ellen will be missed. So, wish her well. Next item, number 8, I-40 interchange Candle Station Road update.
Just as a little brief leads in, as you're all aware, last year, state legislature appropriated general funds to address 2 of our interchanges along I-40/75 in West Knoxville, and one being the interchange at Campbell Station Road, and the second being at Watt Road. TDOT now has just initiated the process, and we've had an introductory meeting to it last week, and I asked John if he could come out and share the efforts that they're going to be doing under their whole new concept of delivering projects. So
absolutely
appreciate it very much, you being here.
And thank you, Jeff, for having us today. So as Jeff said, it was just a few short days ago, in fact, we held a very successful kickoff meeting for the Interstate 40 interchange at Campbell Station Road project. And before I forget, I also want to pass along, having said that, we'll also be holding a kickoff meeting for the Watt Road interchange project roughly this time next month, sometime in earlier mid-September. But as I was saying, we had a very successful kickoff meeting last week for the Campbell Station Road interchange project. And as I was explaining to Jeff and Mike and other members of our project team, I see Daryl here today. It's a very exciting time at the department, in particular from when we're essentially embarking on a new era, a new means of conducting our business from a project delivery standpoint, which of course we're accomplishing through some key departmental initiatives, one of which is known as integrated program delivery. When we talk about programs, of course, we're talking about the programs in which our projects reside. When we talk about integrated program delivery, what we're integrating is project teams. We're also integrating various systems, various structures in order to be able to better leverage exactly what our teams bring to the table. That, of course, is their knowledge, their insights, their experience, innovative ideas, and also various opportunities in order to be able to deliver our projects more efficiently. The key word being delivering efficiently. And so we're going to talk about that for a few minutes before we get into the project. So when we think of efficiency, we have to think of what are our expected outcomes with projects. We have to think in terms of what is TDOT's expected outcomes, What is our customers' expected outcomes? And we really like the definition Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary presents for the definition of efficiency. The quality of doing something, that of course being delivery of projects, from our perspective, the quality of delivering projects well with no waste of time or money. Again, going back to expected outcomes. When we say no waste of time or money, that would equate to delivering projects how? On budget and within schedule. And so with that in mind, we talked with the team about this. What does it mean to deliver projects more efficiently? And this, in part, answers that question. We've determined what it means to deliver projects more efficiently, but then we also have to think about the project. How do we deliver a project that has this many key stakeholders involved, both internally and externally, number of activities, deliverables, tasks, subtasks, to be able to deliver a project of such magnitude efficiently? How do we do that? Well, first, it would only make sense to provide what we call context. What is the bigger picture? What are the issues at Campbell Station Road? And in turn, in response to that, what is our objective that would help solve those issues? And so if we take a look at the diagram on the screen, and I'll try to work through this. Can everybody see sort of we'll try to point, but pointer's not working. Okay, so we'll talk through it. So everybody can envision, if you see the top three, I'll walk you through this. If you take a look at this diagram, you see the top three horizontal lines running left to right across the screen. That, of course, would represent our westbound traffic lanes at the interchange. Beneath that, those three would be our eastbound travel lanes. The vertical lines that you see intersecting perpendicularly across those lines would be north and south Campbell Station Road. So if you take a look at, for instance, everybody in here is pretty much familiar with the Campbell Station Road interchange. If we consider southbound Campbell Station Road, of course, everybody's familiar, we have quite a few businesses. We have quite a bit of retail. We have quite a bit of development through the interchange. We also have a lot of entrances and exits along that area. A lot of unprotected left turns along southbound Campbell Station Road. Also within the interchange configuration itself, we have signalized protected left turns. To the north, up towards Snyder Road, we see much of the same, although to somewhat of a lesser degree. We have some motels, we have some convenience stores, things like that. And of course, to the north, we have the Hardin Valley community, which is one of Knox County's fastest growing communities. All that said, we're all very familiar with Campbell Station Road. At any given time during the day, we see quite a bit of traffic, quite a bit of congestion. What I want to point out here is, if we take a look at the history of the project, of course, the interchange was built back in 1968. We fast forward closer to the present day, it was in 2020 when the Interstate 40, Interstate 81 multimodal corridor study was conducted. Of course, it recognized this particular interchange as a potential improvement candidate. Subsequently, the following year in 2021 is when TPOt undertook the technical analysis or technical planning report for the project area, this particular interchange as well. And so as part of that technical analysis, we undertook a traffic analysis. As part of that, we utilized the MPO's travel demand model, and we can see the no build. In other words, if no improvements were made at Campbell Station Road, what would our outcomes be? So we projected traffic over a 20-year period, the build year being 2045. And what we see on the screen here represented in each circle at each of these intersections, Snyder Road, at our ramp terminals, both eastbound and westbound, at Campbell Lakes Drive. If you take a look at the right side of those circles, we see a lot of red at every intersection. We think in terms of our traffic analysis. Of course, we're talking about the operational characteristics within a traffic stream or traffic flow represented in level of service. And to explain a little bit about level of service, it's often expressed as representation of speed, density, and flow rate, also represented alphabetically by a letter. For example, A would be our optimum level of service, basically free flow movements, very stable, very uncongested traffic flows, very minimal delay, if any delay at all. What we see on the screen though, however, again, if no improvements are made at this interchange, projected out 20 years for the build year, 2045, we see red everywhere. That is a level of service F, both in the AM peak period and the PM peak period. So when we think of intersections, we think of average delay per vehicle. Roughly an F that we see in AM and PM in 2045 would represent ultimately in excess of 80 seconds of delay per vehicle if no improvements are made. So in response to that, we also recognize some other deficiencies at the interchange. We see congestion as an issue. Also, the crash history was also evaluated for 3 years prior to the technical analysis. In that 3-year period, we saw a total of 154 crashes in and around this interchange area, 111 of which were either classified as rear-end collisions or angle-type collisions. And based on those type of collisions, it suggests that congestion could be a factor in each of those. And so we not only have a congestion issue, we have a safety issue. So what we're doing with the team, we're beginning to identify the context. What are the issues and where are we going next? A few other things here that were noted in the technical planning report is the vertical clearance of the bridge over, at Interstate 40 bridge over Campbell Station Road. Very deficient vertically. It does not meet TDOT's current standard. 16 feet is the current standard. It currently measures at 14 feet. So we have a geometric restriction as well. And lastly, I want to make mention, while we have a number of pedestrian type amenities on the south side of Campbell Station Road to the north up towards Snyder Road, what we don't have is a good north-south connection of ped or bike facilities within the interchange area. And so those essentially are many of the issues that currently exist at the interchange. So what did we do in response? Well, as part of the technical analysis report, we took a look at 3 potential improvement alternatives. We utilized TDOT's intersection and interchange evaluation tool. And for time's sake, I won't go through each of those individually, but I will make mention we analyzed the diamond with a loop configuration type alternative. We also took a look at a single point urban interchange. And then lastly, we also evaluated the diverging diamond interchange configuration. Many of you are probably familiar with the diverging diamond. Being here within the region, we have one up at exit 407 in Sevierville. The most recent one we completed was in Washington County in Jonesboro, I-26, at exit 17. So ultimately how, if you can envision with me, and I know the pointer's not working, but I'll try my best. If you take a look, there we go. If we take a look at the bottom of the screen, South Campbell Station Road, how a diverging diamond works, ultimately, if you can envision with me and follow the pointer, if you're headed north towards the interchange itself, you reach this little circle here, which we commonly refer to as a crossover point. It generally is in the vicinity of the ramp terminus, and that's the point at which traffic gently diverges from the right side of the road to the left side of the road, where it remains through the entire crossover. And because traffic is on the left side of the road through the crossover, traffic is free to make that left turn, if you can envision with me, on to westbound Interstate 40, free of having to cross opposing traffic. Similarly, southbound traffic, if we go from Snyder Road, we hit the crossover point at the terminus of the westbound ramps. Traffic gently diverges over to the left side of the road where it remains, and traffic again is free to make that left turn onto eastbound I-40, free of the opposing traffic. So ultimately, based on the diverging diamond's ability to meet, address congestion, the safety issues we talked about with minimal impact in comparison over with the other alternatives, it has been selected as the preferred alternative through the technical analysis report process for this project. And so we're proceeding forward with development of the diverging diamond interchange. So, the next slide. There we go. Getting too far ahead. Let me go back. One more. There we go. So if you can see on the screen, take a look. As part of the technical planning report process, we actually evaluated 2 different variations of the diverging diamond interchange. The first of which, if you can see in red, what you're seeing in red on the screen is the current existing footprint of the existing Campbell Station Road interchange with the ramps and the bridge there. We also evaluated a diverging diamond concept roughly 300 foot to the west of the existing footprint, and this would be a diverging diamond over Interstate 40, if you can envision that. Ultimately, as a result of our analysis, the diverging diamond over Interstate 40 has been selected as the preferred option to move forward with, because if we take a look at the diverging diamond in the existing footprint, it would require presented serious constructability issues and would require considerable reconstruction of the northbound and south lanes of Interstate 40, which result in excessive costs as well. Now, the project itself was budgeted in fiscal year 2023 under a general fund transfer through for a state highway partnership, which we're currently partnering with the town of Farragut on. The portions within the interstate right-of-way, which of course includes the bridge over Interstate 40, the ramps, are being funded at 100% at the state level. The areas to the north and to the south outside of the interstate right-of-way, we're partnering with the town of Farragut on at a 50% share under our local interstate connector program. You can also see at the north of the screen, the dashed dotted line. That's an improved connection that will also be included in this project north of Snyder Road. It'll be the northern connection of Campbell Station Road. That'll be an improved connection up there and replace the existing one. So, all right. So having said that, we've talked about what does it mean to deliver a project more efficiently. And of course, that presents the next question we presented to the team. How do we deliver a project of such complexity more efficiently? And that answer comes essentially in two parts. All right. So as I said earlier, well, yeah, simplified compared to the past, I guess we could say. Again, that answer comes in two parts. As I said a few minutes ago, we're integrating project teams, but we're also integrating various systems in order to be able to leverage opportunities. And one system that we're very excited about here at the department is our new project delivery network. In contrast with our previous system, known as PPRM, PPRM contained roughly 180 activities throughout the entire project delivery process. It also promoted a very tip-to-tail approach, inefficient to some degree. However, in contrast, the TPOt project delivery network, as you can see on the screen, actually broken down into 4 stages: context and scoping, which we, as I said, we just kicked off the project the other day. We are providing context. Where are we headed next? We're going to scope the project next. Footprint established, plan in hand, PS&E. 50 total activities. It provides a very scalable, flexible approach and to enable us to deliver a project more efficiently. Scalable, when we take a look at the Campbell Station Road project, we will utilize, based on the complexity, all 50 of these activities, and we'll utilize each of those in the project schedule. Now, the initial project we undertook last year at TDOT was to some degree less complex. We only utilized about 40 of those activities. However, what I will tell you is a little bit of a success story. When we initiated that project, we had a serious considerable time constraint to deliver what we currently call right-of-way plans within a 4-month period. That's moving pretty fast through a project delivery process from the time you kick a project off. That would be the end of stage 2, what we were going to call in the future functional plans. If we look in stage 1, we have an activity, initiate roadway design, and within that activity, we have a key deliverable known as line and grade plans. It's a very base set of plans, a horizontal vertical alignment with a basic roadway footprint. Creating those very quickly enabled us to, and this is the flexibility of PDN that I'm referring to, it enabled us to take some activities that we would have done in later stages, expedite them back into stage 1, such as final traffic signal layouts, retaining wall layouts. Also, we were able to have some early discussions with our utilities, and we were also able to identify some key water resources to put on the plans that put us in a position to deliver that within 4 months, those right-of-way plans. And so it's a testament to PDN, again, a very scalable, flexible, and efficient approach to delivery. All right. So for the second part, answer to the question, how do we deliver the project more efficiently? I'll quote Alexander Graham Bell, who said, preparation is the key to success. Preparation for TDOT's project managers and its project teams rest in the development of a well-defined project management plan, which consists of 6 total parts. I'll walk through each of those individually. The first of which we see on the screen, a detailed scope of work. In order to create a detailed scope of work, we have to identify all activities, all deliverables, all subtasks necessary to deliver the project, and we have to do that up front. So the detailed scope of work begins with a very, very basic framework known as our draft project scope, where we identify our goals, our objectives for the project, which we've already talked about. Our objective is to construct a diverging diamond over Interstate 40. What were our goals? Again, to alleviate congestion and safety. Also to provide safe pedestrian access north to south within the interchange limits. Also to address geometric limitations that the current bridge provides, the low vertical clearance. So from those goals and objectives, we are able to define what our expectations are for the project as a project team. From there, the project team comes up with draft scope statements that help align the understanding of the team of the major components of what the project contains. In addition to the diverging diamond, there are other things that need to be considered to construct a scope, such as the resurfacing and restriping of the portion of Campbell Station within the project limits. In addition to that, the installation of mast arm signal poles, other various items such as curb gutter, drainage, different things like that, the major components of the project. All that said, a scope is not well defined unless it's very detailed. It's clear, concise, detailed, and specific. So why is that important? We need to have a detailed composition, a breakdown of all activities, tasks, subtasks, and deliverables within our scope. So why is that important? It's important for a number of reasons. Number one, when we do that, when that scope is detailed, it's clear, concise, detailed, and specific, it's broke down, we identify all the tasks and subtasks. What it does is it helps our team members identify their resource demands. That's extremely critical when we think in terms of scope, schedule, and budget. When we're able to identify our resource demands, such as time, people, both internally and externally, we're able to lay out a true objective schedule. And in addition, identify our pre-construction costs as well. It's also important in that, if I can click on that, and maybe that'll come up. Let's see. Let's try in Dallas. Okay, oops. Yeah, it may not come up, but if it doesn't, that's okay. I wonder if you click on it, would it come up? I think we'll have to. That's okay if it doesn't. Oops.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay, now come back. There we go. All right. So if I have another one in a minute, just click on that. Okay. Because it'll be so it's thinking right now. Ah, there we go. So just scroll down.
Now I can't tell why this isn't. Do you know why this is not showing up on the screen?
Did you do stop share or new share?
Do I have to
I
stop?
would do stop share, reshare. And then do share screen again, and then grab wherever that document
There it
is.
is right there. Yep.
That should do it.
Why is it not up there?
Yeah.
Because now it's nowhere.
That's okay.
Now you're beyond my meager knowledge. I don't know why.
Well,
we
do you
lost
want
all
to
of it.
just?
We can talk through it.
Okay.
We can talk through it if we go back to presentation knowledge. We can just talk through it.
I'm wondering whether the back to the presentation is going to come up because none of it. That's weird.
Okay, we're good. All right, no worries. Thanks for trying. Okay, sorry about that. So I'll do my best to talk through it. So we're talking about scope of work. So we talked about the fact that it helps team members identify their resource demands, both time and people. But in addition to that, some other benefits are when we have a detailed scope of work, and as part of this process through stage one, context and scoping, each individual functional area involved in the project, whether it be roadway, survey, right-of-way, geotech, traffic operations, whatever, they will have their own individual detailed scope of work, broken down again, clear, concise, detailed, and specific, identifying every activity, task, subtask, and deliverable. So why, again, is that important? Well, ultimately, these documents will be referenced by each individual team member. Oftentimes, we hear someone say during project delivery, well, I'm waiting on someone. And that someone they're waiting on may be thinking, well, I didn't know you were waiting on me to deliver something. Ultimately, these documents, when they're clear, concise, detailed, and specific to the level I'm talking about, each team member can reference those. So why is that important? Well, number one is transparency. Through doing this detailed scope exercise, each team member understands how impactful their work is and how impactful the work is of another team member. So not only does it help with transparency, ultimately it helps us be more efficient. It sets expectation for team members, and which ultimately results in accountability and efficiency. So having said that, last but not least, we often hear about scope creep. Scope creep is one of the primary causes of failure of a project. When we're clear, concise, detailed, and specific, and I was going to show you guys one of those individual scopes of work. If you can envision with me, one of the things with the project I was talking about earlier that was critical to the delivery of that project was the use of subsurface utility engineering, going out and identifying locations of underground overhead utilities, Ultimately, there are different variations and levels of subsurface utility engineering. There's the very base level that's done through a one-call or desktop research, but then you go to the optimum end of the spectrum, which of course is level A. That of course is the exact, through some potholing and different methods, the exact vertical and horizontal location of a utility. And the project I was referring to earlier, that was of the utmost importance because we had a retaining wall going in the area of that utility. And so because when utilities and survey both identified their scopes of work by being clear, concise, detailed, and specific, they pinpointed to use level A early in the process. And by doing so, that alleviated the potential for a scope creep opportunity later, which would have affected both our schedule and our budget. So again, scope of work. It's no mistake why scope is at the bottom of what we call the iron triangle or the triple constraint. Scope is the foundation by which we're able to outline a very objective schedule when we're clear, concise, detailed, and specific. And then, of course, we're able to, from there, to identify what is our pre-construction budget. I haven't said that. Again, the question was, how do we deliver a project more efficiently? We could stop right there and be fairly successful if we have a very well-defined scope, how I talked about, right? However, it's like somebody said to me one time, if you build a house on a very sturdy foundation and the builder walks away and says, you're not going to have any problems for several years, be careful. If you're neglectful, what happens in 20 years? Well, more than likely you're going to have to replace a roof at some point, right? More than likely at some point we're going to have to replace windows. So there are other key aspects outside of scope, schedule, and budget that are important that we can't neglect, that are important to deliver the project efficiently. One of which is communication. Certainly, when we think about ineffective communication and how it could have an adverse effect on a project, certainly it's very important. I read a publication recently that said that companies are spending anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a year per employee, or losing that amount of money per employee due to ineffective communication. And so, needless to say, we can better align on communication, better engage with employees, and waste less time and money. We bridge that gap through a communication plan. We actually have a very standard communication plan that we're going to utilize on our projects as part of PDN. Some of the benefits of the plan, of course, is it demonstrates how we are to communicate throughout a project. When we talk about expected roles, we talk about expected responsibilities in terms of decision making. Our communication plan outlines who makes decisions regarding scope, schedule, and budget. Exactly who makes decisions with regard to technical decisions and different things of that measure as well. We're also able to promote through a communication plan. We're also able to promote, foster collaboration through expectation. One of the things that a communication plan clearly outlines is that decisions outside of project meetings, and that the team is supposed to be working on having meeting minutes, also having an agenda, working outside of those meetings as well to accomplish our objectives. In addition to that, we all know that a high-performing team settles differences of opinion. They also work very effectively as a team outside of meetings as well. And so conflicts that arise, it sets the expectation that those conflicts are to be addressed between team members as well. And so ultimately, a communication plan is very effective. Again, it gives us, it tells us how we are supposed to communicate throughout a project, answers the who, what, where, and when, with what frequency information is to be communicated throughout the project. So the fifth element, risk is inevitable on every project. I think we all know that. So one of the things that we have to recognize is when we think about risk, what we've told our teams is think about risk as a point in time. In other words, a realization of outcomes other than those that are expected. Again, what are the outcomes we expect? We expect to deliver the project on time and within budget, right? And so risk identification, risk management is a critical component of the project management plan. Because uncertainties are highest at the very beginning of the project, risk management begins at the very onset of the project. In fact, we began taking a look at risk on the Campbell Station project just the other day at our kickoff meeting. So how does it work? Well, certainly we have all of our team members from each of our individual disciplines who, again, they now have the context. They understand what the issues are. That enables them to come to the table, utilize their experience, their knowledge to begin identifying potential risks early. We identify those first of all. We provide a description, as you can see there on the screen, of what that risk is. We identify a probability, the likelihood, a risk ranking based on that. We may identify the risk in terms of cost, and schedule as very low. We may identify them as very high. Subsequently, the risk register provides a risk ranking, so we prioritize those based on a risk ranking. What do we do from there? Well, once we rank them, then we take a look at what is our strategy. Do we mitigate that strategy? In most cases, yes, we do, especially if it's early in the process, because transferring that risk has a risk in itself. But then we ultimately identify a risk owner once we decide to mitigate those, and we track those risks throughout the delivery of the project. And then last but not least, we can imagine if we see on the bottom right hand of the screen, the sixth and final element of the project management plan is quality. We can imagine one of our key deliverables, which of course is our project plans. If we're not ensuring that our plans as we go along the way have all the details they need in them, everything is on the plans that we need, we can imagine if we get too late in the process, we identify things late in the process, it sets us back in terms of our schedule. It sets us back on our budget as well. So if we go back to the PDM flow chart, if you take a look at the bottom of every stage, we see a little red dot at the bottom of every stage. That's a quality check that's going to take place at the end of every stage of PDN. It consists of quality control and subsequently quality assurance. With quality control, what we're doing is we're controlling the quality of the engineering by checking our plans, our calculations, our input, our documentation. We're doing that for compliance, accuracy, and ultimately it results in a quality control checklist by each of the functional area leads. Subsequently, we'll also, as part of that quality check, be doing a quality assurance check as well, where we're ensuring that quality control processes were followed, and then ultimately we'll also check the plans for safety and constructability as well. So those 6 elements of the project management plan are very essential to how we will deliver meet our goals and objectives and deliver the projects more efficiently going forward. So
Good stuff.
we think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Can you go back to the level of service predicted? Did that, when you were looking at the green, I guess, yes, that chart.
The build, and of
Yes,
course,
the build.
this is the build for 2045, and you can see, and I apologize, Jack, and everybody, when you take a look at the right side of the circle again, under the build scenario for the build year 2045, at each of those intersections, key intersections, again, this is overall level of service. If you take a look at those crossover areas I was talking about at the end of the ramps, that's overall, all the movements, the through movements, the turn movements at that interchange, and so we see a lot of B's and C's.
So does that include adding an additional lane?
It does.
Okay.
It does, and I
noticed there was
appreciate you, yeah.
4 lines there, and there's 3 on the other one. So I was just
It
trying to-
does.
Okay.
It does.
Thank you.
And so when you take a look at the current configuration of the interchange, I'm glad you bring that up. Very good question, Jack. Currently, we have one, once you get through the interchange, 1 northbound lane. We have 2 southbounds. As you can see, when we build the diverging diamond over Interstate 40, you'll have 3 southbound lanes and 2 northbound lanes throughout the entire interchange. Now, we also see 4 lanes along the interstate. So this analysis was done with the travel demand model, with the consideration in the 24-45 build year that the interstate would be widened to 4 lanes in each direction and have that auxiliary lane from Campbell Station to Lovell Road as well. So that was taken into consideration.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no, good catch, and appreciate you bringing that up.
Is there any more?
I recently traveled through the Boones Creek,
In Washington County. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's a very similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it works wonderful. It's, you have to get used to it, kind of like the roundabout, but,
Right.
you know, it just goes against nature, turning movement, but boy, it functions and people there to love it.
It does.
It really satisfies a lot of
It does. We see a lot of good comments on the 3 interchanges that we have here in the region. Of course, the other one I failed to mention was at Bessemer Road out there in Blount County as well. So when you take a look at all these diverging diamonds, you know, just some basic facts about these. We mentioned the amount of unprotected left turns on North and South Campbell Station Road. We mentioned the protected left turns there around the interchange. They work really well in areas where you have heavy left turn volumes. And based on information from Federal Highway Administration, some basic facts, one of the things that diverging diamonds are seen to do is reduce delays significantly and also increase throughput significantly as well. So, yeah.
James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of you may not know, we actually have two diverging diamond type bridges at what was East Town Mall. It was built in 84. Most of us probably don't know they were doing that. They hide it really well.
Yeah.
It eliminated the left turns on both the North Mall Road and South Mall Road. That's been there 40, 30 years. That's weird. 40 years.
Yeah, when 640 was built, I guess, in 80, 81, 82. Okay.
All right, any more questions? We're going to move on. Thank you, John, for that
Absolutely.
information. We appreciate you. Number 9 is TDOT and FHWA updates.
Yep.
Okay, seeing
I think Matt or Ian.
Matt. All right.
I was waiting for myself. We were waiting on each other. Good morning. My name is Matt Meservey. I'm the Long Range Planning Director with TDOT. Jeff had asked me to give a quick update on the status of our Transportation Modernization Act. A lot of things have been happening internally since we did get this approved through legislature, but most of it has not been external to you all. So one of the things that I think you have been aware of is our statewide partnership program, where we asked for applications for certain projects. We did a pretty extensive roadshow across the state. Those applications were due on Friday, so we are in the process of collecting those and analyzing. A couple other things that have happened prior to today, we had a industry forum in Nashville at Nissan Stadium. Over 100 people showed up. Most of this was to discuss the public-private partnership that's part of the act and growing these relationships with some of the concessionaires that might be part of helping us with some of the choice lanes and other aspects of that. We have just recently requested through an email for use of the regional travel demand models to help us with the feasibility of where some of these choice lanes would go. But that is still in the early stages. Also, one other item that I wanted to bring up too was with the help of our consultant HNTB, we are looking at providing a criteria that will be used to help rank and prioritize some of the 1,200 projects that we currently have in some state of development that is still in the early stages. So there's not really a lot to say, but I do think that as the months go on, we will have more and more answers to provide you. So I think this could be more of a recurring meeting until December, when we actually have to provide that information to the legislature and give them our plan of how we plan to spend the $3 billion across the state. So that's my update for now. I can answer any questions if you might have any.
Got any questions? All right, thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Sorry, Michelle.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to give a really quick update on our transportation planning grants. I know that I've been giving updates last couple months at the meetings of, hey, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It's still coming. I wish I had a better update of, hey, we're rolling it out next week, but I don't. We have been, as you know, going through this epic reorg at TDOT, and as a part of that, STID has been put in the Long Range Planning Division, which is great for collaboration. But in terms of the planning grant, we're looking into what that means. So we're looking at potentially using the planning grant for more needs assessment based things, adding that kind of eligibility, going back and just seeing what we've done in the past and how it can be improved. Kind of like John's been talking about the quality checks, we're kind of at that point still. So bear with us. When information becomes available, we'll make sure that you get it as soon as possible. And hopefully this will be the best planning grant cycle we've ever seen ever. So stay tuned.
All right, thank you. Number 10, other business. Amy, I think you've got.
Yes, I'll give a brief update. I think though you all are aware that we hired a search firm, GovHR, to help assist us with the replacement of Director Welch, who will be retiring at the beginning of next month. They are currently reviewing resumes and vetting candidates for us, and we anticipate having a list of candidates to review at the end of this month. So obviously there will not be a replacement in time for Jeff's retirement, but we are committed to ensuring that transition is smooth, and we have a very capable transportation planning staff, as you all know. So we anticipate a very seamless transition. Obviously, the person coming in will have big shoes to fill. Jeff's been with us for 38 years by the time he leaves. I believe that's correct. So yeah, I just wanted to recognize that. So, despite his long tenure, Jeff has really never stopped looking for new ways to approach the work of the TPO. And he has time and time again proven his commitment to this region and the people and places of East Tennessee and to the transportation planning profession as well as the greater MPO network. So he's going to be greatly missed. And I think that his tenure will live on well beyond his years here. So thank you, Jeff.
So this is officially Jeff's last technical meeting.
It is.
So it's been a pleasure working with Jeff over the years. And wish you the best, friend. It does deserve standing ovation. All right.
It's been a pleasure.
The other two items, there'll be an executive board on the August 23rd at 9 a.m. in this room, and then also the next technical committee meeting will be September 12th, this very room, 9 o'clock. That, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Let's get out of here. Thank you.